Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Keith Andrew, and this is episode 465. I'm here with Alpha Trivette. I just want to say thank you for being a guest on my talk show.
Thank you, Keith. Wow, 400 and how many episodes?
400 and... Actually, let me just make sure I am correct. Episode 465.
That's pretty impressive, Keith. Congratulations. And thank you for inviting me to be part of the show.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, you're supporting a good cause. Man, you're making a new friend out of it, so it's a win-win.
Hope more than one.
With that being said, the whole point of my talk show is to show people that even with having a learning disability, I can still amount to something. And at the same time, I'm able to turn myself into an example for people out there dealing with any types of learning disabilities and disabilities. To never give up and prove people wrong. Prove to them labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be, and to prove to them you can break the labels. With that being said, hashtag break the labels. With that being said, it's a half hour of your time. When starting off, what can you tell us about yourself?
Well, I am an actor. I am based in the Atlanta area. Have been acting now full-time since 2009. Before that, I spent 25 years in morning radio. From one coast to the other, started in Charlotte, went to St. Louis, to Seattle, to Kansas City, to Tampa, to Denver. And here in Atlanta, we were on the air for 9 years before I left. And then along the way, I had, what got me into radio was doing stand-up comedy. I was headlining stand-up comic, and I did a show in Charlotte, North Carolina, and a guy who was at the Q Morning Zoo there in Charlotte saw me do the show, came up to me afterwards and said, "You want to do radio?" I went, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So that started a 25-year career, and I had been doing some acting also. Had a small part in a show called King Kong Lives that we shot in Wilmington, North Carolina, and another role, pretty nice role actually, in Time to Triumph with Patty Duke. Was a CBS TV movie. And so when I left radio, I thought, well, what do I want to do? What do I love? I love performing and acting. So took classes at the Alliance Theater, started acting, started booking some roles, and a few nice ones have come along since then.
Yeah, absolutely. My first question is, who influenced you to become an actor? And have you ever worked with any famous people?
Well, it's hard to say. I think I knew from a very early age that I wanted to perform somehow. I mean, I was always, I love making people laugh. And then in first grade, our teacher, Mrs. Bullock, decided to have a spring play around Easter time. And the roles were cast, and I had the role of an oak tree. And my role was to stand on stage and hold this branch in front of me with a couple other trees while Peter Rabbit skipped around and had all the lines. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not supposed to be an oak tree. I'm supposed to be Peter Rabbit. I'm supposed to be the star of the show. And the kid who was Peter Rabbit didn't want to be the star of the show. And so I'm sure Mrs. Bullock saw my brilliance and decided that I should be Peter Rabbit. And my mom went all in and made this bunny suit. So that was my first start on stage. And so I don't know that there was anybody or anything other than my desire to perform, to be in front of people. I was a member of an organization called FFA, Future Farmers of America, that led me to leadership roles on the state and national level. Got me jobs at the White House. I worked at the White House for a little while, had me traveling to London with the vice president and to the Soviet Union and 6 other European countries to tour agricultural sites. And so I guess I've always had a desire to speak and to perform. And so I guess that's how it got me there. And yes, on different levels, I guess famous people. Patty Duke, of course, is one. Joe Bologna, they were also in that same film. Of course, I work with Tyler Perry, who's very famous in the film industry here, especially in Atlanta. And I guess I don't look at fame so much as a yardstick.
Right.
because I never felt, even as a successful morning radio personality, I never thought that just because I got up early in the morning and turned on a microphone and talked, that made me special in any way. Nor do I think really that a lot of the people who are acting are really all that special. You know, it's nice to be recognized and to get roles, but it's nicer to be able to perform in something that you love and do what you love doing and enjoy it. So as an actor, I hope nobody ever calls me that famous. I just hope they call me good.
All right. And don't mind me, I'm just looking at my reflection in the mirror. Just let me know, am I looking straight or am I looking sideways?
You're kind of sideways. What am I? Am I looking sideways as well?
I don't know, a little bit, but I just want to make sure I'm not like kind of looking at the wall and not an ornament or anything.
I'm trying to move the... Okay, so I'm closer to you now. How about that?
No, it's perfect.
Okay.
Now, my next question that I was going to ask you is, how many years have you had your own radio show, and do you still do your own radio show?
No, I left radio in 2009. It wasn't by choice. They decided to go with another morning show. That's the way things work in radio. The good thing, well, and having done 25 years of it, I'm no longer there, but I enjoyed doing morning radio. I worked with in the Q Morning Zoo in Charlotte there for a while, and then went to St. Louis and was with another morning team there, and then was partnered with a guy named Kelly Stevens, who I worked with in Seattle, and then in Kansas City, and then in Tampa, and then in Denver, and then here in Atlanta. So we were together. In fact, working with him, I guess, was the second longest relationship in my life, other than that I have with my wife, which, by the way, today is our anniversary. It's our 34th anniversary, and she hasn't killed me yet, so I think that's a great milestone.
It is. Now, my next question I was going to ask you is, have you ever worked with people with learning disabilities and disabilities?
Well, not as a professional, but we did tons of organization and charity events for various for Special Olympics and for and another thing, my brother had Down syndrome, and so I really understand the trials, the tribulations, and the victories that come, with somebody who's trying to overcome those things. So professionally, I've not worked with anyone with learning disabilities, but throughout my life, I have encountered and worked hard through my charity work to try to help people who do fight with those things every day.
No, it's all about proving to people you can still amount to something. Prove to them to never give up and prove people wrong, and prove to them that labels do not dictate who you are and who you want to be. You to prove to them you can break the labels. It's all about proving people wrong.
Well, a lot of times the only limiting factor for people with disabilities are the ones that we place on them. And I have found in my experience that the more you encourage and the more you believe and the more you allow for success and achievement and accomplishment, the more those things come along. And likewise, the more we try to put limits on those things, the more limited they become. So I'm all for giving responsibilities and encouragement and opportunities to people of all disabilities.
No, absolutely. And now the next question I was going to ask you, over the many of years you've been in the entertainment world, have you ever been interviewed besides me? Have you ever been interviewed and have you had articles written about you?
Yes. In fact, I have two articles that have just appeared in the Huffington Post, one in their online and one in their global online. Yeah, and several others, hometown things that I did years ago. You know, when I worked at the White House, the Fredericksburg Freelance Star did a big article about me. Yes, I have been interviewed by other folks. And the thing about it, you know, in doing radio, I did interviews from the other side for a long time. We had a music oriented morning show, but we would have guests from time to time, and so I was the interviewer and also the interviewee a lot of times as a stand-up comic, because we'd come into town and the comedy club would want to promote the show, so they'd have comics to do the morning radio shows and make the rounds. And so I've been on both sides of that. So I know it's a lot more challenging than it may seem, and you do a great job of it. So you know, the interview job is a very fun one. It can be difficult if you make it so, but it's a very fun one from both sides, I think.
No, absolutely. Now, have you ever been to New York, and do you have any connections in New York?
I have been in New York on a number of occasions. My daughter works up there. She works for Random House Publishing. I did a Broadway lab for a show called Bull Durham, the musical. I don't know if you've seen the Kevin Costner movie, Bull Durham, but it was made into a musical, and it was a lot of fun. We did it here at the Alliance Theater. It made its world debut here. And then a year and a half ago or so, we did a lab on Broadway, which is you perform the show and invite a lot of people who hopefully have money and want to invest the $10 million that it takes to put in escrow and get the show staged. Hasn't gotten there yet, but I think they're still working on it. I'm not sure. But yes, I've been to New York, and many, many years ago when I was doing stand-up, I actually did a guest set at Catch a Rising Star there in New York. So I have New York, my agent, or I love New York, and my agent is constantly looking for roles to audition for and things to do up there, and hopefully I'll be able to get back up there and be gainfully employed while I'm there.
No, absolutely. Now, my last subject I'm going to talk to you about, and I'm going to take a commercial break and then pass the show over to you, is how do you feel about social media? Can social media make you or break you? But at this point in your career, you've done everything, so it's kind of relevant. But what is your advice for the younger talent out there? Like for me, for an example, what would you say about social media?
Well, it can be a wonderful platform, and I think a great launching pad for careers. But it can also be the cliff where they fall off. I think the usefulness of it comes in being able to make contacts and to network and to make your name and your brand known. The pitfall comes when you use it for the wrong things. And I have some friends who are in the same business, and they like to get into arguments, whether it be about politics or religion or the business itself. And to me, I mean, I have my own political and religious and social views, but I don't air them on social medias, on Facebook. That turns out to, when you express your opinion, then you have people who you don't even know who decide to argue with you, and then that generally devolves into name calling and just a waste of time. So I don't engage in those things. What I do with social media, with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, is to just talk about my career and to try to elevate the careers of other people. It seems to me that the more you reach out and try to help other people, or you mention their names in something that they've done, or some way that they've helped you, or the fact that you've worked with them and it was a pleasure to do so. To me, that leaves a much better taste in someone's mouth than if you are constantly posting pictures of yourself posing in your bathroom mirror, which I find very strange. And I'm sure people are very pleased with their bodies and like the way they look, but for crying out loud, do we have to see it every day? I mean, keep your shirt on. I just don't care to see it, and I don't care about your political views. If you want to network with me on a professional level, then yeah, I'm all for that. But use social media as a platform to improve your brand. And it won't improve your brand if you're posting the wrong things on a daily or weekly or however many times basis. I just think you need to be positive.
No, absolutely. With that being said, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I'm going to pass the show over to you.
Arlene Schofield.
My name is Shireen Snow.
My name is Carla A. Miles.
Diana Camuto.
This is Christine Dunford.
I'm me, Eden.
Caroline Macy. This is Walker Fannin.
Lydia Camille Dixon.
I'm Sarah Dates Wardam.
My name is Linda Preston, and you're watching the Keith Andrew Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to 465. I'm here with Alpha Trivette, and I just want to say thank you for sticking with us.
Oh, thank you, Keith. It's a pleasure to be here with you and be your 460. What? How many again?
465.
Woohoo!
Well, unofficially, I did over 700, but I made some mistakes along the way.
Well, and you know what happened with those mistakes? It made you better, right?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, you can't avoid mistakes. Mistakes are going to happen. The only thing that you can do with them is improve and try not to make those same mistakes the second or third time around.
That's true. But, hey, I'm not perfect, so I make mistakes on an everyday basis.
Oh, I, on the other hand, am perfect, so it's okay. Kidding, of course.
Now, with the last 12 minutes left, I'm going to pass the show over to you. Was there anything you wanted to talk about? Anything you want to promote? This is your time, after all.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I got 12 minutes worth or not, but this weekend's going to be this weekend and next. Actually, St. Patrick's weekend. I'm doing a show called with Sketchworks. They are a fantastic sketch comedy troupe that works here in Atlanta. We're going to be at the Village Theater, so if anybody's in Atlanta wants to come to see Sketchworks shows this weekend and next, have several fun roles in that, and Sketchworks often, in fact, who knows, that may bring me back to New York sometime soon, because they do appearances in New York on occasion. Also, let's see, I'm reshooting a couple of scenes in a horror movie. I've done a couple of those. This one is called Unfinished Business, where I play a grandfather. Can you imagine that, them casting me as a grandfather? I can't believe it. Who comes back, and it's rather mysterious reasons for his return to his old home, and we won't find out till the end of this movie just why Grandpa has come back and why he's trying to murder someone. Also have a couple of films coming out this year. One is called Mine 9, which is, I can't wait to see this because it's about, it's actually sort of a combination of three actual mine disasters that occurred in West Virginia and the stories that evolved from that. And that's kind of close to me because my mother grew up in a coal mining town in southwestern Virginia. The town was called Pocahontas. And at one time, back in the 1920s, well, from 1900 to the 1920s, Pocahontas was one of the hottest towns in America. My mom used to say they had 10 churches and 23 saloons in Pocahontas. The coal mines were just booming. And my grandfather ran the company store. You know, in those days, it was the Pokey Fuel Company. They would own pretty much everything in town. They owned the company store where you would go as a miner and you'd get, you wouldn't necessarily get salary, but you'd get chits that you could take to the store and turn in for groceries or whatever it is you needed. And they owned the homes that they lived in and everything else. It wasn't the greatest of situations, but my grandfather was the manager of the Pokey Fuel Company store. And some wonderful stories from that old town. So that'll be coming out soon. And another one called Crash Blossom, where I play a totally different role. This is about old money in the South. We shot that in Raleigh, North Carolina, and it's about an old-time family that has sort of run the town, and in particular, they've owned the newspaper. So when you control information, you pretty much control everything, and how that's all changing in the 21st century and what they have to go through to survive that change. And let's see, what else? Hopefully lots of other new projects. In fact, I just got a new audition coming up for another mine-type show that shoots in Kentucky. So I'll be recording that and submitting that soon, and we'll just have to see what happens.
No, absolutely. Now, wrapping up, I have a couple questions for you off the air. But the first two I'm going to ask you is, are you on social media? Are you on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram? Are you on any of those fun things?
I'm on all of those things. You can find me on Facebook. It's ALPHA, Alpha, like the bits. That was my grandfather's name, by the way, the one I was just talking about, who ran the company store. And same on Twitter. It's Alpha Trivette 1 on Twitter, Alpha Trivette on Instagram, and the same on LinkedIn. So you can find me on all those platforms.
No, absolutely. Now, my last question for you is, going on the record, when I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, what was your first reaction, and what made you say yes?
My first reaction, anytime anyone asks me, I'm always flattered when somebody wants me to be a part of their journey professionally, and I was in particular with you, and then you explained to me the purpose of your show, and that really enhanced my reason for wanting to be on the show with you, to get to know you for one thing, and to share with your audience. So I'm always flattered when someone wants to find out more about me. I don't necessarily find my life all that interesting, exciting, and so I take that back. Sometimes I do. I've done some really cool things, and I don't mind talking about them. But it flatters me that people are interested.
No, absolutely. Now, wrapping up our interview segment, it was an honor and privilege having you as a guest, and I'm looking forward to part 2 down the road.
Well, thank you. As later on in the year, we'll have more to talk about.